and welcome to episode 20 of The List Makers with another fun topic, I hope. A mini podcast from the Doctor Who show. We take a top 5 topic, create our lists, have a chat about it, don't interrupt each other, but then just riff. I'm Dave.
I'm Rob.
And this is our big 20th anniversary episode. And we are doing, appropriately enough, because this is kind of got 5 Doctors 20th anniversary vibes here, we are doing top 5 monsters.
We are indeed. I spent a bit of time on this list.
I did as well. I threw around a number of different ways to approach this, and maybe some ways to be clever or not, and then I just said, you know what? It's easy. Just pick the top 5 monsters. I've been really straight down the line on this one. Maybe with some odd picks, we'll find out. Rob?
That's interesting, because I've been tricksy.
You've been tricksy. Oh, usually I'm the tricksy one.
That's right.
So, okay, it'll be interesting to see what you've done here. I reckon I know at least one of yours. There's one I'm writing down now. I'm confident will be on your list.
Oh, there's one. Or listeners will go, that will be on his list, and it's not.
Oh, well, that could be a big upset. It could be a big upset. Okay, well, look, we'll stop messing around. I reckon we'll have 2 snaps.
1 for me.
Now that I know you've been tricky, I might downgrade that to 1. But no, I'll stick with 2. I'll stick with 2. There's 2 on here I think you'll have.
Alrighty.
My list, number 5, I went for the Ood.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about monsters in the new series, that genuinely made me a little bit scared. That genuinely had me thinking about, pulling the cushion up a little bit and just going, well, that's a bit nasty, a bit scary. Oh. It is, in fact, the Ood. When I think of them, red eyes, crawling through spaces, walking through dark corridors, slowly crashing in on people, they are actually quite terrifying. They look menacing. In their second appearance, they are actually quite nasty in what they do to poor old Captain Darling. I think that the Ood are actually quite a scary monster. And so I went for the Ood.
Okay.
Number 4, I have picked the Cheetah People.
Okay.
Now, these have been mocked at times by people. And look, I understand that the look of them is a little bit cuddly in places. The animatronics aren't great, but I actually think it's a really sleek design. I think they do look like cheetahs, and cheetahs are animals that look cuddly and like a kitty cat until they can, bite you and scare you down. And I think that does work. Their talons are really effective, but they're a monster that's got a culture. We have a planet. They have a society of sorts. They have a way they function. We have a way they hunt. And the way they're directed as well, I think, is really effective. Those shots looking up at the horse with them on board is really good. But also, if you want to talk about monsters that are dangerous, the idea that once a cheetah person has decided they're going to hunt you, they may play with you, they may toy with you, they may let you go for a while, but they will get you.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, a really chilling thing, and I think that's really effective. So I went for the Cheetah People.
Okay.
Number 3, the Crinoids.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've only ever had one of them, but my God, it was terrifying. And terrifying in oh so many ways. Yeah. The time that I was most disturbed and most frightened ever watching Doctor Who was watching somebody be turned into a crinoid, because that slow realization that your body is being taken over by this plant is a chilling and terrifying thing. Mm-hmm. Exterminate, blast, you're dead. Okay, that's fine. We get that. But having the time to realize what's happening to you is a really terrifying concept. Then you've got the bigger crinoid that's wandering around hunting people, and it seems really deadly. Then you've got the fact it can control plants and it can kill you that way, and we get some really good examples of that, not least Scorby being dragged under the pond by those weeds. That's really good. And then that final shot of the cathedral-sized crinoid, one of the best model shots in classic Doctor Who, just towering over that mansion. Visually spectacular, scary, interesting, evocative. I think the crinoids are fantastic. Let's see the crinoids back.
Yeah.
Number 2, not always the best stories, but they look fantastic. They look like the classic archetypal monster, and that is the Martians, the Ice Warriors. Who doesn't think about, when they think about a monster, those great big lumbering green shelled armoured monsters as they stalk through the ice, or they stalk across Earth, they stalk through the citadel of Peladon, they stalk through a submarine. They just imposing and scary. Again, we've got a culture. We have different types of them. They have different values. We see different characters. Sla is different to Islia, who's different to Azixia. Who's different to Varga. They are actually a really good race of monsters in there. So I think good characters and good monsters that look great. Mm-hmm. Number one, I had to go the Daleks.
Sure.
I am a fan of the Daleks. I love so many of the Dalek stories, particularly those early 60s Dalek stories, and look, the 70s Dalek story, and the 80s Dalek. I like Dalek stories. The Daleks, particularly in the classic series, are usually a guarantee that the game is going to be lifted, but they are a fabulous design. They are scary. At their best written, they are ruthless, cunning, properly evil, and I think that just makes for a perfect monster. I know it's a cliche, but I would have been lying to myself if I didn't have the Daleks at number one.
Great list, Dave. Great list.
Thank you.
We have one snap.
We have one snap. It's going to be that or that. I'm really intrigued to hear your list now. You've built this up, Rob.
All right. My list that is kind of tricksy, and people at the end will know what my criteria was, I think. In at number 5, the Crinoids.
Oh, wow.
There's the snap.
I did not pick that as the snap.
I think there's something extra chilling about plant life-based monsters. Vervoids fall into this same category too. You know when you let your backyard overgrow, Dave, and you see what nature can do? It's just relentless. And that's the whole vibe with the Crinoid. Not only would it be horrible to be taken by one and become one, but they can germinate and make more pods. And if you don't get a handle on it quick smart, the whole country, if not the whole planet, is just gonskis, And on top of that, they're bloody sentient as well. Oh my God. They are chilling. Very chilling.
Very cool.
So that's our snap.
Very cool.
In at number 4, appropriately, it's the 456. Now, the 456 were the antagonists during the 3rd series of Torchwood, which isn't Doctor Who in itself, but it is absolutely the Doctor Who universe, no ifs, buts or maybes, so I'm including them here, Dave. I think the 456 is just brutal. The way they take a dozen kids back in the 50s or 60s, that's bad enough. But when they come back and they want 10% of the Earth's children, it's just chilling. And the way they incorporate the children into their bodies and sort of live off them, it's absolutely horrifying, grim, dark stuff. It's miles and miles ahead of most Doctor Who monsters' appearance, most Doctor Who monsters' goals. It's very adult. It's body horror in a way. Oh gosh, I couldn't not have them here, even though it's kind of a cheat that they come from Torchwood. But same universe. In at number 3, the Great Intelligence. I think this is a very clever monster, having no physical form and, relying on possession to have any real effect on the environment. I mean, it's got to have massive mental powers to pull off that kind of mind control, and I think that makes for a really interesting kind of enemy, because it could suddenly be your best friend who's possessed, or a robot yeti, or it could just appear as a fog, that just consumes anything that goes into it. It still has to be written with care, though, I'll say. Otherwise, when you have something that can be anything or do anything, it has to be written properly. But I think if it is written properly, it's a really neat monster. Mm-hmm. In at number 2, the Eternals. Now, these are a race of, cosmic beings, I guess you could say, introduced in Enlightenment back in 83. And while you might think they're not monsters because they look like you and me, and indeed several of them are quite handsome, they're still monstrous in what they do. And I think Davo calls them parasites, if I recall correctly. I think there's quite a bit of scope for using them too in the show going forward. I know in the Jodie episode, Can You Hear Me?, they were supposed to be like Eternals, but they were speaking about the Eternals as separate things. So although they were similar, I don't think they were Eternals. I'd like to see the Eternals come back. They don't have to be on sailing ships, having a race or anything.
Yeah.
But I would like to see them in some way, because I think that's a really interesting kind of character to play with. Number 1, and also immortal in a sense, vampires, Dave. we've had different kinds of vampires in Doctor Who over the years, whether the kind in State of Decay, who were related to the vampires the Time Lords used to fight, or comedy vampires like Dracula showing up in The Chase, or novels like Goth Opera, or Blood Harvest, or indeed Vampire Science, or in Big Finish audios like Project Twilight. One even popped up in part of Death Comes to Time, I seem to recall, from when we were doing that review a while back. And I hear there are some vampires in some of the Benny books. So vampires are such a huge monster that audiences love all around the world, and they have been in Doctor Who a lot, probably more than people think once you start adding up the audios, the novels, the TV, classic era, modern era, and so on. So they have to get the number one spot for me.
Rob.
Yes.
That's a very cool list.
It's a different list, and as people will see, I didn't go for any of the big ones, the Cybermen, Daleks. They're all wonderful, Sontarans even. I put those to one side. They're great. I know they're great. I wanted something a bit different.
So, look, I had the same approach in part. I said, I want to make sure this isn't just Daleks, Cybermen, Sontarans, Ice Warriors, the classic list. And when I was debating, I thought, okay, I'll put the Daleks on because I have some nice things to say and they're a favourite of mine. I thought, do I have to have the Cybermen? I thought, you know what? I don't need to have the Cybermen on my list because Rob will have it on his.
That's the one I thought you would think of, yeah.
Yeah, so look, bit of an upset that they're not there, but you've got some really cool ideas there as well. I will say the Shalonians were one that I was tempted to put on from the New Adventures, but I wasn't going to put something from the TV series off the list for that. But I really love your call with the 456 because as an adult, a proper adult watching Doctor Who and Torchwood and all the rest of it, yeah, the monster that has probably most shocked me and the moment that I've had the biggest sort of that proper gasp was some of those reveals of the 456, what they were doing. The moment when the kid is pushed, the used kid is pushed against the glass and you see what they're doing with these children. That was a real oh wow, oh my God moment. So yeah, I really like that.
Because the nature of Torchwood lets them get away with more than Doctor Who. If Doctor Who could, I'm sure we would have had stuff like that in Doctor Who. But because we don't, they really stand out when you sort of compare this to your run-of-the-mill Doctor Who monster. It's like, oh my God, this is like rated R horror stuff from the cinema compared to, Doctor Who, children's TV Doctor Who. It's like night and day a lot of the time.
Yeah, and there was an episode of Strange New Worlds earlier this year that did not the alien in the same sense, but what they were doing with kids. And the visuals of it in a very similar way. And that also was just a real, wow, they've gone there moment. The snap, I would never have predicted it would be the crinoid.
I've kept my light under a bushel all these years, I think.
No, but everything you said is absolutely true. And what you said about overgrown vegetation being naturally creepy is really, really true. You think about when you walk into somewhere that's a bit overgrown, a bit overvegetated, you hesitate before you step in. You're very careful. You're very nervous. And so Plant Life does capture that. You mentioned the Vervoids, and I absolutely had them floating around on my list of possibilities. Again, a moment that genuinely scared me as a kid, being 6 or 7, watching Vervoids, was the Vervoids rampaging through and that visual of the dart, the poison dart going into people's hands and killing them. That was one that really stood with me. In the end, I couldn't quite go there because they do look a little bit, made of foam.
Yeah.
A little bit fake, but that's okay.
Little bit like genitalia too.
Well, yeah, I didn't notice that, I swear, until it was pointed out to me. I don't know what that says.
Well, you were only 6 or 7, so maybe.
That's true. Some monsters that probably were a bit jibbed in not making the list. Cybermen, look, I think we both know why we both left it off. It was just so obvious we wanted to do something a bit different. We get that. The Angels.
Yeah, but such a game of diminishing returns, if that's the expression. The first appearance is brilliant, but every time they come back, I'm just like, oh, God, really? Oh, no, really? Oh, no, you're doing that now? Oh, no.
So I had the same thought. And then I thought to myself, Village of Angels.
Oh, yeah, okay.
They are redeemed a bit there, and that got them back in the contention.
I try not to think about Flux all that often, though, to be honest.
Look, that's true. So, look, I was umming and ahhing about the Angels for that 5th spot. In the end, I went with the Ood because at the end of the day, the Ood have frightened me more than the Angels did. I think the Angels are a really cool concept. And you're right, they're great in Blink. They're quite chilling in Village. But there's something about the rampaging Ood look that just scared me more than an Angel did.
It's because it's so blank. You know, when the Angels are coming after you, they do the snarly thing and they're like, you know, and the teeth are out and all of that. And it's like, okay, they're doing the cliche, I'm coming to get you, I'm snarling at you. Whereas the Ood are just like blank. They just look the same, except for the eyes changing colour, perhaps.
Yeah, and there's also something about the inability to rationalise with a crazy Ood that I think is also very effective. And you see that with Cyberman as well, so that's really interesting. I think, Rob, if we'd been kids when the new series was on, rather than, you know, grumpy old fans, we would probably have the Silence on the list.
Yeah, Silence could have made it in. And just also going back to the Angels, one thing I will say, when their big power is they just send you back to the past, where you'll probably have an all right sort of time because you'll be really smart compared to everyone else and you probably do all right for yourself. Is it that scary a fate versus just being killed by one of these other monsters?
That's true. That is actually very true.
I've never been particularly scared by what the Angels do.
No. Yeah, no, good point. So, yeah, look, I considered the Angels and I considered the Silence, but both just missed out. And look, I'll be honest, in most cases because I was the right age to appreciate a lot of these monsters. So they do resonate with me. And I think that you kind of have to be a kid to really appreciate a good Doctor Who monster.
Yeah.
And that's why the 4, 5, 6 is a good pull, because they are one that I think scared us as adults.
Yeah. One on your list, the Ice Warriors, almost made my list, but got chopped off because of my little rule of not having the biggies on there. But they're great. Ice Warriors are bloody great.
Yeah, the Sontarans were one that, you know, is a classic, and I thought long and hard about having. In the end, I went with the Ice Warriors because of that visual and just that really impressive thing. I think the Sontarans have been done well occasionally, not as well occasionally. Sometimes they're quite terrifying, sometimes they're quite comic, and so I couldn't quite put them over the Ice Warriors. I did think about putting the Silurians in. Everybody knows I love the story and I love the race, and they're really good characters, but I think as well there is a diminishing returns factor in there. Even if I'd gone Silurian / Sea Devils, yep, each of their first appearances is good. Whilst I defend Warriors of the Deep, the Silurians aren't nearly as effective there. They're not as deadly there. And then you start to get to the new series where they just haven't done them well.
Yeah, and then we get to Legend of the Sea Devils.
And then we get to Legend of the Sea Devils where, look, the design of the Sea Devils is probably the best thing in that episode. Yeah. But it's still, yeah, as I say, if I could, like a lot of these monsters, you know, the first appearance, fantastic. It's the second and third and what makes them an ongoing monster that's really effective. Or sometimes they're just a genuine one-hit wonder, like the Crinoid, that just makes a huge impact to both of us.
Agree, yeah.
We're out of time once more, Rob. It's just flown by.
I know.
But look, what Doctor Who fan doesn't like to talk about Doctor Who monsters?
Yeah, I want to hear other people's lists too.
Absolutely. Please tell us what you think we've missed out on there, apart from the Cybermen. We'll cop that one.
Yeah.
Time to pull a topic out of Turlo's Hat of Rassilon. This needs some new topics, so please send us in. And we have top 5 regenerations.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, at least this time we've got a much narrower band in which to pick. We're not trying to get, 50 monsters or 150 stories down to 5.
We might get 2 or 3 snaps this time.
We might get 2 or 3 snaps this time. I reckon we will get 2 or 3. But that's a problem for next month because our time is out. I've been Dave.
I've been Rob.
And we'll make more lists next month.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.